Good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you to the present session. My name is Pantelis Golitsis. I am Associate Professor of Ancient and Medieval Philosophy at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. I am the panelist of this session, which will be devoted to Sophia Xenophontos' book, Georgios Pachymeres, Commentary on Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics, Critical Edition with Introduction and translation. I should ask you, of course, to mute your microphones. And as you know, we cannot accept live questions. Please post your questions in the Q&A box. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce Sophia Xenophontos, a fellow colleague from the Department of Classics of Aristotle University. Sophia is a classicist. She obtained her BA in Classics from the University of Cyprus, and then moved to the University of Oxford, from which she got her MA and her PhD. Prior to her appointment as Associate Professor of Ancient Greek Literature at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, Sophia was Assistant Professor of Classics at the University of Glasgow. She specializes in Plutarch and Galen, but luckily for us, she has also devoted several years of her research to Byzantium. In particular, she has edited together with Petros Bouras, Greek medical literature and its readers from Hippocrates to Islam and Byzantium in 2018. A year later, together with Katerina Economopoulou, Brill's Companion to the Reception of Plutarch. And we know, of course, Theodore Metochites' debt to Plutarch's Moralia, and indeed, Sophia subsequently published a translation with introduction notes of Theodore Metochites on morals or concerning education. Sophia has also edited with Anna Marmotoro the reception of Greek ethics in late antiquity and Byzantium, and of course the present book, which is an editio princeps with introduction and English translation of Georgios Pachymeres' commentary on Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. For me, this edition is a particularly joyful event, since, if I may say, I was the first to point to the scholarly community the existence of this commentary by Pachymeres. It survives, unfortunately, not integrally. Practically the second half is missing in 3 manuscripts. 2 of them go back to Marcianus 212, a manuscript written by the hand of Bessarion, while he was still in Constantinople. In Mionis' catalogue of the manuscripts kept in the Bibliotheca Marciana, this commentary is wrongly identified with Book 11 of Pachymeres' Philosophia, which is not a commentary proper, but a synopsis of the Nicomachean Ethics. Until fairly recently, Pachymeres was known as a philosopher for his Philosophia, which is a synopsis of Aristotle's philosophy in 12 books, but we now know that he was perhaps the most prolific writer of philosophical commentaries in Byzantium. He wrote a commentary on Porphyry's Isagogy and the 6 treatises of Aristotle's Organon, a commentary that remains unpublished, a commentary on Aristotle's Physics, which has been wrongly edited under the name of Michael Psellos, and also unpublished commentary on Aristotle's Metaphysics, which has been wrongly attributed to John Philoponus, a commentary on Aristotle's On the Parts of Animals, which has been recently edited by Eleni Papa, and of course, the commentary on the Nicomachean Ethics, which is now available in this brilliant edition by Sophia Xenophontos. Before handing over to the author, I should say, I think that Sophia's book, which has been published under the auspices of the Berlin-Brandenburg Academy of Sciences, is available thanks to a fund by the Arts and Humanities Research Council of the UK in open access on the website of the De Gruyter, which I think is a very good thing. So please, Sophia.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Pantelis, for chairing this session and for your very kind introduction. It's a great honor for me to participate in this wonderful event, which enables us to get to know each other's research, thus promoting Byzantine scholarship, networking, and collaboration. Of course, this festival would not have been possible without the meticulous organization of the person who first envisioned it. So a big thank you goes to Petros. I just need a second to share my screen. Right, can you see my slides? Okay, right, so the book I will be presenting today, as Pantelis has already mentioned, is the main output of a major research project on Aristotle's reception in Byzantium, funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the UK. This project sought to address the following core question. What was the impact of Aristotle's moral philosophy on the culture and educational practice of late Byzantium? To explore this question, I used as my source a valuable textual testimony, the commentary on Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, written around 1310 by the eminent Byzantine scholar and teacher of philosophy, Georgios Pachymeres. This important work was until recently unpublished and thus, for all practical purposes, inaccessible to us. So in the framework of this project, I produced the first critical edition alongside an English translation and a comprehensive introduction, which offers an informed reading of the work's purpose of production and target readership, its relationship to its source material, and its philosophical originality, among other things. For your convenience, I have included here the table of contents, just to give you an idea of the topics you will find in the book's introduction. As you can see, this book also includes the addition of diagrams and supplementary notes or scholia accompanying Pachymeres' commentary, whose paratextual function is key to a full understanding of the work. So these are the main contents of the book, which is published in an open access environment, freely accessible online through the Gruyter's website to anyone who is interested. And you can download it by clicking on the relevant tab if you visit the publisher's website. Now, as is also evident from the details given here, the volume is part of the series Commentary on Aristotle and Graeca Byzantina, which is an editorial venture under the auspices of the Berlin Academy of Sciences and Humanities. This is something that Pantelis has already mentioned, and this editorial venture aims to make available a large number of unedited Byzantine commentaries on Aristotle's works, contributing to the advancement of Aristotelian studies. Now, in the remainder of my talk, I will first try to acquaint you with this new text, and then I will draw some conclusions as to its importance as a textual witness. First, what kind of a text is it? In general terms, the answer is that it's an exegesis on an ancient reference work, in this case, Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. The more specific answer is that it is a lemmatic commentary consisting of individual entries in the form of short units of text that explicate a portion of the original reference work. This lemmatic arrangement can be better understood if we turn to the layout of the work in the earliest extant codex, preserving it, which is Marcianus Graecus at 212, dated to the 15th century. So here, Pachymeres' explication in small script surrounds the version of the Nicomachean Ethics that occupies the central part of the page, with the base text and commentary kept as far as possible in alignment. As you can see, a careful system of cross-referencing is in place, in which each entry is introduced by a lowercase letter of the Greek alphabet in red ink, which is repeated above the relevant section of the original to which the entry refers. Having familiarized you with the generic identity of the work, a second question concerning this text is what its place is in the history of commentary writing on Aristotelian ethics. Pachymeres' text is the last in the chain of surviving exegetical commentaries on the Nicomachean ethics in Greek in the strict sense of the term. At the other end of this chain that begins in antiquity, it is preceded by Aspasius's commentaries and by the anonymous scholia on selected books of the Nicomachean ethics, and after a gap of almost 10 centuries, by the commentaries of Eustradius of Nicaea and Michael of Ephesus. As it is obvious, in late antiquity, there was no commentary specifically devoted to the Nicomachean ethics, and so the more than usually pedagogical character of Pachymeres' work presumably represents an effort to compensate for this lag, as I have argued in the book's introduction. The next question that has to be asked follows naturally from this historical overview. How does Pachymeres' commentary differ from the earlier attempts at exegesis mentioned above? A full answer would take us too long, but to put it briefly, Pachymeres' commentary seems to reflect a strictly focused plan to comment on the Nicomachean ethics as a whole, and not just on separate and often widely separated books of the Aristotelian original, as its predecessors had done. In light of this, we could say that it is more selective and concise than the lengthy exegesis by Eustradius and Michael of Ephesus. Most importantly, Pachymeres' work is not merely a didactic manual seeking to serve students of philosophy like some of the earlier attempts, but it aspires to enable the hands-on use of ethics by encouraging its readers to adopt a philosophically minded life of self-control. By offering extracurricular guidance to its readers on their everyday behavior as moral agents, Pachymeres' commentary made an important contribution to the historical reception of the Nicomachean ethics in the late Middle Ages, as I have shown in detail elsewhere. I will now give you just one example of Pachymeres' intense interest in practical ethics, and along the way, I will discuss the main features of his moralizing discourse. In commenting on the section of the Nicomachean ethics that discusses popular understandings of happiness with a focus on external goods such as pleasure, wealth, and honor, Pachymeres radically recasts Aristotle by imposing a short moral commentary. I quote this section of the text. Everyone says that this is happiness, both average people and the wise, and insofar as they agree on its name, they assume that to live well and fare well is to be happy. And furthermore, such persons do not deem happy anyone who seems prosperous and good, but is in a miserable situation. For with regard to living well and faring well, some argue for pleasure, others wealth, and others honor, considering this to be happiness. But it is possible, I say, to both live well and fare well while in grief and poor and lacking honor, so long as one is leading one's life admirably and as one must. Or rather, in order that I may speak accurately, no distress affects persons of the sort who are always rejoicing in accord with the saying, rejoice at all times. For this is what the man who pronounced these words, that's Paul, had in mind. And here the quote ends. So The narrative in bold, which you can see on the slide, communicates the perspective of Pachymeres, who confidently states that external goods do not affect individual happiness. This sits rather uncomfortably with Aristotle's overall thesis that external apparatus is necessary for human beings to engage in virtuous behavior and therefore achieve happiness, either as indispensable goods or conditions or as instruments. So by setting up a dialogue with his precursor, Pachymeres invites his students to critically assess certain principles of Aristotelian ethics before applying them to their lives. On the other hand, Pachymeres' departure from Aristotle in this section brings him much closer to Christian thinking, which offered equal chances for happiness to all people, irrespective of social class or physical condition. This is reflected in Pachymeres' strategic revision of Aristotelian externals, specifically with Paul's motto, "Rejoice at all times," a move which in effect Christianizes pagan ethics, rendering them topical and thus attractive to Pachymeres' readership. It is worth mentioning that although in Eustratius and Michael there is a similar awareness of the Christian tradition surrounding Aristotle's interpretation, in Pachymeres this awareness is sometimes pushed a step further by becoming part and parcel of the commentator's agenda for applied ethics, as we have just seen in this case study. And I believe that this is another respect in which Pachymeres' commentary diverges from the earlier exegetical tradition. I could, of course, go on talking about this work for hours were it not for the time constraints. The other points I would have liked to mention is for example, Pachymeres' exegetical methods, or his critical use of ancient and late antique sources. Or I could also have referred to the work's educational dynamics and social impact. But I won't, hoping that I've given you enough reasons to want to get hold of the book and read it. It is, after all, a key source attesting to the centrality of Aristotelian philosophy in the cultural renaissance of late Byzantium. It also casts new light on Pachymeres' role as an educator, offering much needed information on his working methods beyond what has already been deduced from his partly edited Philosophia. This text provides a fresh assessment of the nature, scope, and function of late Byzantine educational practice. And needless to say that it also improves our knowledge of the revival of Greek ethics in the late Middle Ages. So overall, this text will be a vital tool for anybody working on the philosophy and literature of the late Byzantine world, but it will also appeal to those scholars interested in the reception of the classical tradition in Byzantium, the development of Greek ethics in the medieval and Renaissance world more generally, and to historians of education, cultural historians, and to scholars working on religious studies. It will also concern the basic field of textual criticism and critical editing of Byzantine texts. So a fascinating new document awaits close study, eager to be incorporated into our research endeavors, or simply for us to live through it out of intellectual curiosity. Thank you very much for your attention.